Hello. Well, welcome to my chinwag, number 23, I think this one is. At 6 o'clock on the morning of Tuesday, October the 1st, Nala, my therapy dog, which is a Labrador, and I came down from our hotel room in London's Bloomsbury and walked to Russell Square so that we could, for the next 90 minutes or so, get some fresh air and enable me to prepare for the Equity Appeals Committee hearing. Sue Gilroy, chairing the Appeals Committee, opened the proceedings, informing us of everything that we already knew, having outlined all the details over again, such as my option to make an opening and closing statement after being questioned by the panel, and the time frame that they would use to make their decision, so on and so forth. She then told us that in a desire to help their impartiality and focus merely on the points before them, this appeals committee had been asked to not even Google me, so that anything they might have seen or heard of me would not influence their judgment. Sue then informed us of her background and her experience over many years. Then the person sitting on her left, Poppy Gilbert, introduced herself, and then she enumerated her credentials over her 5 years of membership, told us all the committees she was on, and added that she had studied law. She was followed by the person sitting on her left, Isabella Jarrett, who then listed all her union participation as an actively engaged member over several years, blah, blah, blah. And now it was the turn of the next person sitting on Isabella's left, Nana St. Bartholomew Brown, who then summarised her union involvement till 2011, and now it was my turn, and since it was being recorded apparently for some political masters to OK or not, it was my turn to say that my name was Madhav Sharma and that I was the appellant. Next, sitting on my left, was David Cockayne, who informed us that he'd been a member of the Equity Council for 14 years, that he'd served as Vice President of Equity for 3 years, and had also for a number of years been the chair of an earlier version of the Disciplinary Committee, during which tenure he had ensured that the tenets of natural justice were enshrined in the procedural conduct of that committee. Sitting diagonally opposite David and next to Sue was Adam Adniana, the Deputy General Secretary of Equity, and next to him was Harry Shepherd, who said that he was an organiser on the Equity staff who had been given the task of taking minutes of the salient points of the session. The atmosphere was civil, but understandably tense. All of the above now having been completed, I was asked if I wished to make an opening statement at all. And I said, yes, please, I'd like to exercise my option. And I read an opening statement which I had finalised that very morning, and it went something like this. Dear fellow equity members, disenfranchised, damaged, deeply disappointed, it is my contention that I, a long-service and long-standing member, a former member of the Equity Council and the Executive Committee, along with several other equity committees and negotiating parties of the Union, as well as Equity's delegate to the TUC to ensure the rights of equity members to never be paid less than the national minimum wage, something of which I'm quite proud, since I was the first equity member ever to do this. I have now been subjected to intolerable pressure, intimidation, and unjust treatment by my own trade union in this matter. Since I'm not a lawyer and am denied legal representation, and I'm not an employed or paid professional trade unionist, I shall endeavour, I said, to follow the advice given to me by the Equity General Secretary Chief Executive, Paul Fleming, who wrote to me on the 5th of December 2022. I realise these processes can be technical and confusing, so please feel free to use phrasing which you feel comfortable with, rather than feeling obliged to use a form of legalese. Outraged and distressed as I am, I shall now try to make my case as to why the decisions of the Equity Disciplinary Committee about me should be rescinded in full. Well, it would appear that all this hullabaloo has been occasioned by a Facebook post of mine on November the 8th, 2022, a small part of which contains the following relevant lines. Of course, the relatively new treasurer may be a lay member, albeit one who, according to my information, has worked as a sort of agent to apparently assist his favoured clients obtain audio work. Is this equality of opportunity to all members? And is this what an officer of equity should be doing? Now, Equity Rule G72 states, says legal assistance shall not be provided for any complaint or claim against one, the union, or to any of the union's officials or employees, or another member, unless such persons are acting in the capacity of a proprietor, manager, agent, or similar. Well, equity, it seems to me, appears to be in direct contravention of the above Rule G72, which limits its use against members, unless such persons are acting in the capacity of a proprietor, manager, agent, or similar. Let me reassert that I was not acting in any such capacity. Imagine, if you will, the dismay and shock caused to this elderly, loyal trades unionist when just before Christmas 2022, I received a letter from solicitors, Lee Day, writing on behalf of the Honorary Treasurer, David John. You will understand that receiving this letter from Lee Day was quite intimidatory to a lay member such as myself. It also had a debilitating effect on my physical health. For example, my diabetic level shot up to 9.7. The normal recommended level is just over 6 because of the stress and worry. And it also affected my mental well-being. The above medical consequences and some informal advice from friends meant that I did not respond to the letter from Lee Day. 2 months later, and I repeat, 2 months later, presumably having been unable to succeed with this tactic of a legal letter to intimidate and bully me, on the 21st of February 2023, David John made an internal complaint to Equity in which he refers to the legal letter, paid for, as it was later revealed to me in May 2024, by my own trade union, Equity, in contravention of Rule G72. On 23rd February 2023, Paul Fleming then appointed his deputy, Louise McMullen, to investigate this complaint. It is my contention that having taken the issue outside the union and not having withdrawn that letter from the solicitors, the Deputy General Secretary, Louise McMullen, should not have even referred the matter to the Disciplinary Committee in view of Equity Rule G72, which is quite clear. Also, by doing so, Louise McMullen increased the likelihood and possibility of, and demonstrated, confirmation bias, and I contend that any bias is against all principles of natural justice, free speech, and independence of our thought in even our less than perfect democracy. With respect, therefore, and on the above grounds alone, I submit that the contents, the procedure, the findings, and the conclusions of the Disciplinary Committee should be declared null and void by this Appeals Committee of my peers. However, if further persuasion is necessary, may I draw your attention to the actual complaint submitted by David John, the Honorary Treasurer, which of course is contained in the report by Louise McMullen before the committee. To this lay member, and I only refer to matters germane to this appeal, David John's complaint reads like a repetitious rant, one sentence being repeated 3 times. It is unsupported by any evidence, and it makes serious and unfounded allegations against me. It is clear, therefore, that Equity and David John have broken Rule D14.1, which requires them to observe these rules, as you can see from the Equity Rulebook. They are also in contravention of Rule D14.3, because in my contention, this persecution of me is contrary to what any reasonable person would expect from responsible trades unionism. Further, the complaint breaks Rule D14.4 in not behaving reasonably in dealing with fellow members. Now, if the committee would be so kind as to reread my relevant Facebook post of 8th of November 2022, you will note that I have made no accusations against the new Honorary Treasurer. David John had just been appointed to the post by the Equity Council and have merely asked questions about whether it was reasonable for an officer of the Union to distribute funds belonging to all members while acting for selected members, and how this was justified in view of the much vaunted equal opportunity for all members. Members of this committee may also wish to take note of a line later in that same Facebook post of 8th of November 2022, in which I state, "To be crystal clear, I abhor any discrimination against anyone because of gender, sexual or political persuasion." I didn't mention creed or faith, but I should have done, I suppose.